I still remember the moment I pushed myself away from the kitchen chair, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. The plane tickets glowed on my laptop screen, casting a pale blue light across my face in the quiet kitchen. A round trip to San Diego, 2 passengers, me and my 8-year-old son, Liam Harris. One click of the mouse echoed in my head like a declaration. It's over, Megan. 3 years of living in the shadows end today. 3 years ago, my husband, Andrew Harris, was declared dead in a bizarre accident during a business trip. There was no body, just a hastily written report and a death certificate handed to me with practiced sympathy. I still remember that day like a scar I can't erase, standing in this very kitchen, holding Liam while a trembling colleague said, "He's gone. I'm so sorry." I collapsed on the floor, feeling the world split open and swallow us whole. From that day on, I lived like a ghost. I had once loved Andrew so much I endured his endless work trips, his late-night calls, and the growing coldness in his voice. I told myself he was just busy, that he would change, but instead he disappeared. Suddenly, permanently, or at least that's what I thought. Since that day, I swore to live for Liam. I sold my wedding ring to pay part of our mortgage, took a full-time job at a local bank, and refused to let myself rest. Every spare minute was spent trying to fill the emptiness I saw in my son's eyes. Liam didn't ask about his dad much, but every time he did, it was like a blade twisting inside me. Today, when I bought those tickets to San Diego, I wasn't just buying a vacation. I was buying a promise to myself, to move forward, to smile again, to teach my son that life isn't only about loss. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. Liam ran in from the living room with a wide grin the moment he heard we were going to the beach. He wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "You're going to be happier there, right, Mom?" I didn't know how to answer. Maybe yes, maybe no. But I knew one thing for sure. This was the beginning of something new for us. There was a time when my life felt like something out of a glossy magazine spread. Andrew Harris wasn't just handsome. He had that kind of effortless charm that made people lean in when he spoke, and that quick wit that made me laugh even on the worst days. I met him when I was 25, a junior loan officer at the bank, still figuring out who I was. He walked in with that confident stride, looking like he owned the room, asking questions about mortgage packages as if he already knew all the answers. By the end of that meeting, I was smitten, and he knew it. We married a year later. At first, it was the kind of marriage people envy: weekend hikes in the Rockies, wine nights under the stars, spontaneous road trips just because we could. Andrew had recently moved into financial brokerage and quickly became one of the rising stars in his firm. I felt proud standing next to him at office parties, his arm draped over my shoulder like we were building something unshakable. And then Liam came along. My sweet boy, our miracle. I thought Andrew would settle down, trade late-night work calls for bedtime stories, choose family dinners over client dinners. Instead, it went the other way. He became even busier, traveling to meet investors and close deals in places I'd never even heard of. There were months when Liam barely saw his dad except in passing, Andrew kissing his forehead at 6 a.m, and me pretending not to hear the front door close at midnight. I tried to talk to him about it, at first gently, then desperately. "Andrew, you're missing his childhood," I said one night, standing in the kitchen with tears I refused to let fall. He wrapped an arm around me, kissed my hair, and promised it was just for a season, that all his long hours were to build us a secure future. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did believe him, until the day he simply didn't come home. At first, I thought it was just another trip he'd forgotten to mention. Then his phone went straight to voicemail. For 3 days I told Liam, "Daddy's busy, honey, he'll be home soon," even as dread curled in my stomach like a fist. On the 4th day, the call came. An accident. A snowmobile going through thin ice on a remote river in Idaho, swept away by a current so strong they said divers couldn't recover a body. I remember holding that phone, hearing the words, and feeling my knees give out. My little boy looked up at me with those wide brown eyes, confused as I sat on the kitchen floor, clutching the phone to my chest. I thought about all the missed birthdays, the silent dinners, the lonely nights, and hated myself for still loving him even then. They issued a death certificate a week later, a neatly printed piece of paper, legally binding, sealing my life into a chapter one hadn't agreed to end. I buried an empty urn because there was no body to bury, no closure, just silence. And in that silence, I built walls around my heart, so high that even Liam noticed. "Mommy, why don't you smile anymore?" he asked one night. I smiled anyway, because what else could I do? For 3 years, I convinced myself I was healing, that I was strong. But grief has a way of sticking like glue. You can scrub and scrape, but it clings to your soul. That's why this trip to San Diego wasn't just about beaches and sunshine. It was about breathing again, even if just for a week. I had no idea how quickly those walls I'd built were about to crack. 3 years had a way of changing everything and nothing at all. I learned to wake up without expecting Andrew's voice in the kitchen. I learned to pay bills, fix leaky faucets, and show up at every one of Liam's soccer games without anyone else in the stands for us. I became the woman who smiled politely when people offered condolences, who waved off concerned questions from coworkers, who convinced herself she was fine, even when I wasn't. Denver became quieter in those 3 years. Our friends slowly stopped calling, not out of cruelty, just because life moves on. Mine felt frozen, like winter refusing to thaw. I poured myself into work at the bank, built a routine that left little room for feelings, and clung to Liam like a lifeline. He became my reason for everything. If I felt too tired to get out of bed, I reminded myself, he needs breakfast, he needs school, he needs you to be strong. Liam grew fast, too fast. One day I was teaching him how to tie his shoes, and the next he was telling me which superhero movies I just had to see. And lately, the questions about his dad had started again. Quiet ones whispered at bedtime when he thought I couldn't hear the sadness under his voice. "Mom, do you think Daddy can see me? Or, when I grow up, will I remember what he looked like?" I answered the best I could, but every answer felt like I was erasing Andrew more, replacing him with vague memories and half-truths about a man who worked a lot but loved you very much. The truth was, I hadn't processed any of it. I'd put my grief on a shelf like an old book I didn't want to open. But there are only so many times you can walk past that shelf before the weight starts to crack it. One evening, after putting Liam to bed, I found myself scrolling through vacation packages online. I hadn't been anywhere in years, not since before Andrew's death. At first, it felt wrong, like I was betraying something sacred. But then I looked at Liam's closed bedroom door and thought, he deserves happy memories too. That's how I ended up with 2 tickets to San Diego, 1 hotel room near the beach, and a week blocked off on my work calendar. It felt reckless, like jumping into a cold lake, but also strangely freeing. This wasn't just about sunshine and ocean views. It was about telling myself I was still allowed to live. When I told Liam, his eyes went wide and his mouth fell open like he'd just been given a superpower. "The beach? For real?" he shouted, bouncing on the couch. He wrapped his arms around me so tightly I could barely breathe, whispering, "You're going to smile more there, right, Mom?" That simple question lodged in my chest like a pebble you can't swallow. I kissed the top of his head and said, "I'll try, honey. I'll really try." That night, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights of Denver, thinking about how different my life had become. I used to dream about exotic vacations with Andrew, clinking champagne glasses on some European balcony. Now, just booking a simple trip to California felt like climbing Everest. But as I packed Liam's favorite swim trunks and sunscreen, a thought crossed my mind I hadn't felt in years. Maybe, just maybe, this is the start of something better. I had no idea then how right and how wrong that thought would be. The morning of our flight, Liam was bouncing through the house like it was Christmas. He dragged his little rolling suitcase behind him, the wheels clattering on the hardwood as he shouted, "San Diego, here we come!" His joy was contagious. For the first time in years, I felt that flutter of excitement I thought I'd buried with Andrew's death certificate. The airport was its usual chaos. People rushing past with coffee cups, security lines snaking forever, the dull hum of tired travelers trying to make their connections. Liam held my hand the entire time, his tiny fingers gripping mine with a mix of excitement and nervousness. We boarded our flight, and as we found our seats, he pressed his face to the window and whispered, "We're really going, Mom. We're really doing this." The flight was full but calm. People settled in, pulling out headphones, books, or neck pillows. I tried to relax, telling myself this trip was about letting go of the past, about new memories. But then I noticed Liam staring down the aisle, his little brow furrowing in confusion. "Mom," he whispered, tugging at my sleeve. "Is that Dad?" My heart stopped. I turned my head slowly, afraid of what I'd see. A man, maybe 2 rows ahead, sat sideways in his seat, talking to a young blonde woman beside him. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed most of his face and a pair of dark sunglasses. Something about the slope of his shoulders, the way his hands moved as he spoke, it was painfully familiar. I forced a shaky laugh. "Sweetie, no. You must be thinking of someone else." But then he shifted slightly, and my stomach turned to ice. There it was, that small scar under the jawline, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look. A scar I had kissed 100 times in another life. Liam whispered, "Mom, I'm serious. That's Dad." I couldn't breathe. For 3 years, I'd told myself Andrew was gone, that I had buried every shred of hope. And yet, here I was on a random flight to San Diego, staring at a man who looked exactly like my dead husband, alive and laughing with another woman. I gripped Liam's hand. "It's probably just someone who looks like him. Honey, people can look alike." But my voice trembled, betraying the lie. I turned back to the window, willing my pulse to slow, but every nerve in my body screamed to look again. As the flight took off, I kept stealing glances, memorizing every detail. The way he leaned in to listen to the woman, the casual way his fingers tapped on the armrest, exactly how Andrew used to when he was thinking. I told myself it wasn't possible. That grief was playing tricks on me. But deep down, a whisper echoed in my head. What if it really is him? For the rest of the flight, I sat frozen, my thoughts spiraling between shock and anger and something far more dangerous. Hope. When the wheels touched down and passengers started gathering their bags, I made a choice that surprised even me. I stayed seated, clutching Liam's backpack, waiting for the man to leave first, so I wouldn't have to see his face again. Or maybe because I was too afraid I would see it clearly. But Liam wasn't done. He turned to me, eyes wide, and said, "Mom," he looked right at me. He smiled. And just like that, my entire world tilted. San Diego greeted us with warm sunlight and the smell of salt in the air, a welcome change from Denver's dry chill. Liam was still buzzing from the flight, talking about how the ocean looked from the window, how big the waves must be, how he couldn't wait to build the biggest sandcastle ever. I smiled, trying to stay present, but my mind was stuck on that man from the plane. It had to be coincidence, I told myself again and again. People look alike all the time, but that scar, that posture, even the way his hand rested on the seat back, it was all too familiar. And Liam, kids don't imagine things like that, not with that level of certainty. By the time we checked into the hotel, I'd convinced myself to let it go. This trip was supposed to be about healing, not digging up ghosts. We had a balcony view of the ocean, and when Liam saw it, he gasped like someone had handed him a treasure chest. He spent the evening running between the window and the TV, chattering about seashells and dolphins. For a few hours, I felt normal again. That night, after Liam had drifted off, I stepped onto the balcony, breathing in the ocean breeze. It was quiet, peaceful, until I heard voices from the balcony below. At first, it was just muffled arguing, like any couple spat on vacation. But then I froze. That voice, that cadence. "Do you ever care about anything besides money?" A man snapped below, frustration laced in every word. My stomach dropped. My hands gripped the railing so hard my knuckles whitened. That voice. I would have known it anywhere. I didn't even have to hear every word. I could hear the rhythm, the exact way he emphasized his syllables when he was angry. A woman, young, judging by the tone, shot back, "Don't start with me, Andrew. I told you what I wanted from the beginning." Andrew. My knees went weak, and I had to steady myself against the balcony door. It wasn't possible. It wasn't supposed to be possible. I crouched slightly, just enough to peer down without being obvious. There he was, same broad shoulders, same familiar way he gestured when he talked, wearing a t-shirt and shorts. The wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses were gone, and there was no mistaking him now. Andrew Harris, my dead husband, was standing a single floor below me, very much alive and arguing with another woman. My first instinct was to storm down there, demand answers, scream all the questions that had been buried for 3 years. But my feet wouldn't move. Instead, I stood there, shaking, listening to snippets of their fight. "You think dragging me to some cheap hotel in San Diego makes up for everything?" she yelled. "It's a 4-star hotel, Chloe," he snapped back. Chloe. So that was her name. I backed away, pressing a hand over my mouth. My heart felt like it might break all over again, not from losing him, but from finding him, alive, smiling at another woman, living a life I wasn't even allowed to know existed. When I finally stepped back inside, Liam stirred in his sleep and mumbled, "Mom." I knelt next to him, brushing hair from his forehead. "Shoo, it's okay, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." He sighed and rolled over, completely unaware that his entire world had just shifted. Mine had too. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, one thought running like wildfire through my mind. He's alive. Andrew is alive. And I had no idea what to do with that truth. The next morning, I woke up hoping it had all been some cruel dream. But one look at the balcony below reminded me it hadn't. Andrew Harris, my dead husband, was alive, breathing and staying one floor under me with a woman named Chloe. I moved through the day on autopilot, smiling for Liam as we explored the beach, but my chest felt tight, like every breath was borrowed. I told myself I'd focus on Liam and let the rest go, but when night fell and Liam drifted to sleep, curiosity and anger got the better of me. I slipped on my wide sunglasses, tied my hair back, and walked down to the hotel bar. The place was quiet, lit with soft amber lamps and the hum of a small jazz trio in the corner. And there he was, sitting alone at the bar, a drink in hand, looking tired and older but unmistakably Andrew. He didn't see me. He was too busy staring at the glass like it held all the answers he'd been chasing. My legs moved before I could think. I sat 2 seats away, trying to keep my voice low and casual. "Rough night." He looked up, startled, then gave me a weary half-smile. "You could say that." His voice, God, that voice, rolled over me like a wave. "Want to talk about it?" I asked, forcing my tone to sound like I was just making small talk with a stranger. Andrew shrugged. "Girlfriend drama. You know how it is." I pretended to laugh, even as my stomach churned. Girlfriend drama. This man had faked his death and left his wife and child behind, only to be arguing about hotel quality with someone new. "She doesn't get me," he continued, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Thinks I'm some boring old guy trying to play young again. Maybe she's right." He glanced at me then, eyes searching like he was trying to place me. I held my breath and looked down at my drink. "What do you want her to see?" I asked quietly. He chuckled a bitter sound. That I'm not just some guy with money. That I've been through hell and back. That I'm trying to do better. But no one ever sees the big picture. He paused, then shook his head. "Forget it. You don't want to hear my sob story." "I'm a good listener," I said softly. Inside, my heart was pounding. Hell and back? He had no idea. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. 3 years ago, I lost everything. Thought I was done for. Had to start over from scratch. Leave people behind I didn't want to leave. But you can't explain that to everyone. Sometimes you just disappear. I gripped my glass, so hard I thought it might break. Disappear? That's what he called abandoning us. Disappearing? I wanted to scream, to tell him who I was, to drag him upstairs to see his son sleeping in blissful ignorance. But I didn't. I just sat there, nodding like a stranger while my world tilted. Andrew finished his drink and stood, giving me a polite nod. Thanks for listening. You're easier to talk to than most people I know. I managed a tight smile. Anytime. And then he walked away, leaving me staring at the bar top, shaking with a mix of fury and something I hated to admit, relief. Relief, because the voice, the face, the man, they were real. He was alive. But now I had to face a terrifying question. What was I going to do about it? The following afternoon should have been perfect. The sun was warm but not blistering. The breeze carried that salty smell that always made me feel like life could start over, and Liam was happily building what he called the strongest sandcastle in California. I sat on a striped towel nearby, watching him dig and shape towers while sipping from a bottle of water. For the first time in days, I almost forgot about Andrew almost. Then I heard a woman shouting. I turned instinctively, scanning the crowded beach until I saw her. Chloe, the young woman from the balcony. She was kneeling beside someone sprawled in the sand. My heart froze. It was him. Andrew was lying on his side, pale and unnaturally still. One arm twisted awkwardly beneath him. Chloe was frantic, shouting his name, shaking his shoulder, but he didn't respond. For one split second, I considered staying where I was. After all, he wasn't my problem anymore. But then I saw Liam watching, wide-eyed, gripping his sand shovel like a lifeline. Mom, is that? I didn't let him finish. Stay here, sweetheart. I called, already running. When I reached Andrew, his breathing was shallow, his pulse faint but present. Years ago, I'd taken a CPR course for work. Muscle memory kicked in. I rolled him carefully onto his back, tilting his head to clear his airway. He's breathing, I said, more to myself than to Chloe, who was still sobbing. Probably heat stroke or dehydration. I shaded his face with my towel and barked, "Go! Get someone from the hotel or call 911." Chloe nodded and sprinted off. It was surreal, kneeling there on the sand, holding the wrist of the man who had faked his death and shattered my life. Part of me wanted to let go, to stand up and walk away. But I didn't, because even after everything, there was still this reflex inside me to save him. Andrew stirred, eyelids fluttering. He groaned, his voice low and disoriented. "Megan." I froze. He had recognized me. "Yes," I said quietly. "It's me." His eyes opened fully, confusion flooding his face as he focused on me. You're really here." "Alive, just like you," I said, my voice trembling with a sharp edge I hadn't planned. Chloe returned with a hotel staff member carrying a first aid kit. He knelt beside us, checking Andrew's vitals while I stepped back, wiping my sandy hands on my shorts. My pulse was still racing and not from running. The staff member helped Andrew sit up, offering him water and instructions to rest in the shade. Chloe hovered, glaring at me like I was some stranger intruding, which in her world I guess I was. Andrew's gaze stayed locked on me. "Megan, please, we need to talk." I stood, brushing sand from my legs, my expression neutral. "Not here. Tonight, 10 o'clock, the hotel bar." He nodded, still looking shaken, not just from the collapse, but from seeing me, very much alive and standing right in front of him after 3 years of believing he'd erase me from his life. I walked back to Liam, who had abandoned his castle and was staring at us with a frown. "Mom, is that really Dad?" he whispered. I crouched down, pulling him into a hug. "We'll talk about it, sweetheart. But for now, let's just head back inside." As we walked toward the hotel, my mind reeled. Tonight, I would finally hear the truth. And I wasn't sure which terrified me more, that he had a good reason for what he did, or that he didn't. The hotel bar was quieter than the night before. Just a handful of guests scattered around sipping cocktails and scrolling through their phones. I arrived early, needing a moment to settle my nerves. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I wrapped them around a glass of water and tried to breathe. At exactly 10 o'clock, Andrew walked in. No hat, no sunglasses, no way to hide. He looked older, lines etched around his mouth and eyes, a hint of gray in his hair, but still undeniably Andrew Harris. My husband. My dead husband. He approached cautiously, like I might bolt or slap him across the face. Honestly, I hadn't ruled out either. "Megan," he said softly, almost like a prayer. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at him, waiting. Finally, I said, "You have 2 minutes to tell me why I buried an empty urn and spent 3 years raising your son alone." He winced, rubbing his hands together like a man trying to wash off something that wouldn't come off. "I didn't mean for it to be like that," he said. "I had to disappear, Megan. I had no choice." "You had no choice but to fake your death? To let me tell a 5-year-old boy that his father was gone forever?" My voice cracked despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "Make me understand that, Andrew. Make me understand why I've been grieving someone who was alive this whole time." He swallowed hard, eyes flicking away. "I was in trouble. Bad trouble. You know about that startup investment I was working on? It wasn't just a business deal, Megan. I borrowed money from the wrong people. People who don't forgive mistakes. When the deal went south, they threatened me and you." I stared, unsure if I wanted to laugh or cry. "So instead of coming to me, you staged an accident and disappeared? You let me think you were dead because it was easier than telling me the truth." "It wasn't easier," he said quickly. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I thought if I stayed, you and Liam would be in danger. So I left. I cut ties, changed my name, paid back every cent I owed. I've spent the last 3 years trying to build a life where no one could hurt me or you again." My eyes burned, tears threatening to spill, but I refused to let them. "And Chloe? Is she part of this safe new life too?" He flinched, then nodded reluctantly. "I met her after. She doesn't know anything about my past." I sat back, crossing my arms. "You let me grieve you for 3 years, Andrew. You let Liam grow up thinking his dad was gone forever, and you were sipping cocktails by the ocean with someone else. Do you even understand what that did to us?" He looked down, shame radiating off him like heat. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I had to see you. I had to see Liam. I had to know if there was even a chance to make things right." The tears came then, but not for him, for me. For the years I spent clawing my way out of grief while he hid behind a new name and a new girlfriend. "You don't get to decide when to come back," I said quietly. "You don't get to walk in here and act like we can just pick up where we left off." Andrew reached out, but I pulled back. "Megan, please. Let me be a father again. Let me explain to Liam. I'm begging you." I stood, pushing my chair back slowly. "Tomorrow, 11 a.m. at the hotel cafe. You can see him, but after that, we'll see where this goes." And then I walked out, my legs trembling, but my spine straight. I finally had the truth, but it didn't feel like closure. It felt like the start of another storm I wasn't sure I could weather. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd made a mistake agreeing to this. Letting Andrew see Liam felt like opening a door I had welded shut 3 years ago. What if it hurt Liam more than it helped? What if it reopened wounds we had finally learned to live with? Liam, however, woke up thrilled. He thought we were just going to breakfast. "Do they have pancakes, Mom? Please say they have pancakes," he said, tugging on his sneakers. I forced a smile. "They have pancakes, sweetheart. Don't worry." By the time we reached the hotel cafe, Andrew was already there, sitting at a corner table, nervously tapping his fingers. When Liam saw him, he froze. His face scrunched up like he was trying to solve a puzzle too big for him. "Mom," he whispered, "that's him. That's really him, isn't it?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, honey, that's your dad." Liam didn't run to him like in the movies. He walked carefully, eyes locked on Andrew, and stood across the table, staring. Andrew's eyes glistened as he knelt to meet him. "Hi, buddy," he said softly, his voice breaking. "It's me. It's Dad." Liam's lip trembled. "But you were gone. Mom said you." He stopped, choking on the words. Andrew's face crumpled. I know, and I'm so sorry. I made a big mistake. I thought I was protecting you and your mom, but I hurt you instead." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, Liam stepped forward and wrapped his small arms around Andrew's neck. Andrew held him like he might never let go, his shoulders shaking. I looked away, blinking hard because whatever my feelings for Andrew were, Liam had just gotten a piece of his heart back. They sat down and Andrew ordered pancakes and orange juice for Liam, coffee for himself. The conversation was awkward at first. Liam asked about where Andrew had been, what he'd been doing, and Andrew gave vague but honest answers about traveling for work and fixing some big problems. I let him handle it, resisting the urge to correct or add details. At one point, Liam leaned in and whispered, "Did you miss me?" Andrew swallowed hard. "More than anything in this world." That was all it took. Liam smiled, small at first, then wide, and started talking about school, soccer, and the sandcastle he'd built yesterday. Andrew listened like every word was gold, nodding, laughing at the right moments, his eyes drinking in every expression on our son's face. When breakfast ended, Liam tugged on Andrew's hand. "Can you come to the beach with us today? Please." Andrew looked at me, silently asking permission. I hesitated, but finally nodded. For a little while, the three of us walked down to the water, and for an hour, it almost felt normal. Andrew and Liam built sandcastles together, just like I had dreamed they would years ago, laughing when the tide took one of the towers. I watched them, my heart torn in two directions, grateful that Liam had this moment, but painfully aware of all the moments we had lost. When it was time to leave, Liam hugged Andrew again and said, "Can we see you tomorrow too?" Andrew glanced at me. "We'll see, buddy. One step at a time." On the way back to the hotel, Liam's voice was bright, excited. "Mom, maybe he can come home with us. Maybe we can be like before." I didn't answer right away because I didn't know the answer. The door I had welded shut was wide open now, and what came through it might change everything for better or worse. That evening, after Liam fell asleep, I sat on the balcony staring out at the ocean. Waves rolled in steady and calm, so unlike the storm inside my chest. Seeing Andrew with Liam had been healing in a way I hadn't expected, but it also brought back a raw ache I'd worked so hard to bury. Andrew knocked on the balcony door softly. I let him step out, his eyes cautious, as if unsure how close he was allowed to stand. "He's amazing," Andrew said quietly. "You did such a good job with him, Megan." I crossed my arms. I didn't have a choice. You were gone. He nodded, guilt etched deep on his face. "I know, and I'm sorry. I can't take back what I did, but I want to be in his life now. Even if you never forgive me, please don't shut me out from him." I studied him, searching for any sign of the man I used to love, the man I married, not the one who ran away and let us grieve him for 3 years. "You don't get to walk back into our lives and act like we can pick up where we left off," I said firmly. "You faked your death, Andrew. You left me to explain to our son why his father was gone forever. You don't just erase that because you feel guilty now." He lowered his head. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I know I lost that right, but I am asking for a chance to be his dad again. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll move slowly. I'll respect your boundaries. Just please, Megan, don't keep me out of his life." For a long moment, all I could hear was the sound of the waves. Part of me wanted to tell him to disappear again and never come back. But I couldn't ignore the look on Liam's face when he hugged his dad that morning, or the way he laughed on the beach like he hadn't in years. "You can be in his life," I said finally, "but on my terms. You'll call before you visit, no surprise drop-ins, no disappearing again. And if you ever lie to him again, about anything, we're done. Permanently." Relief washed over Andrew's face. Thank you. I promise, Megan, I won't screw this up again. I turned back to the ocean, my voice steady now. Good, because I'm not the same woman you left behind. I built a life without you, and I'm proud of it. I don't need you, Andrew. Liam doesn't need you to be perfect. He just needs you to be honest. Andrew nodded, blinking quickly. You're stronger than I remember. I had to be, I said softly. You made sure of that. He left quietly after that, and I stayed on the balcony, letting the salty breeze dry the tears I didn't even realize had fallen. This wasn't the fairy tale reunion Liam might have hoped for, but it was honest. And honesty was something I could build on, even if it was just me and Liam moving forward, with Andrew playing a small, carefully monitored role in our lives. When I finally went to bed, Liam stirred and murmured in his sleep, Mom, we're happy, right? I brushed the hair from his forehead and whispered, Yes, sweetheart. We're happy and we're going to be okay. For the first time in 3 years, I believed it. It was exactly 6:17 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day when the knife slipped from my fork and clattered against the china. I remember the sound. It was sharp, final, louder than it had any right to be in a room full of murmuring and wine glasses. And then silence. Vanessa stood up at the head of the table, still wearing that cranberry red dress she always picked when she wanted attention, with a smile so polished it looked premeditated. Before we carve the turkey, she said, raising her wine like a toast, there's something we need to say. Her voice was calm, practiced, smug. My stomach twisted. I knew that tone. It was the same one she used when she lied about me stealing her earrings in high school, got me grounded for a month. She looked around the table, as if preparing for an ovation. We had a family vote, she continued, and we've decided. You're not family anymore. There it was, like someone had driven a nail straight into my chest. For a second, no one breathed. Then, clapping. Megan, my cousin, clapped like she was at a concert. Uncle Dean raised his glass. And my mother. My own mother chuckled and said, Well, someone had to say it. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at my plate. The stuffing had gone cold, but my blood, it boiled. My father, seated to my right, didn't even look up. He just sipped his beer and muttered, It's probably for the best. That was the moment it stopped hurting. Not because it didn't matter, but because it confirmed what I had refused to accept for years. They never saw me as part of them. Not really. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs dragging against the hardwood floor like the end of a funeral march. Wow, I said, standing. You actually rehearsed this. Vanessa's grin widened, victorious. You've been toxic for years, Camille. We're just done pretending. My mother didn't even pause from spooning cranberry sauce onto her plate. It's unanimous, she added, like they were canceling a cable subscription. No one spoke up for me. Not one person. No hesitation. No protest. Just silence. And their smug little faces, already turning back to their plates like nothing had happened. Good. I reached into my tote bag, pulled out a thick folder, black, heavy, carefully organized, and placed it in the center of the table. The sound it made when it hit the wood, thunk, cut through the laughter like a knife. I figured this might happen, I said softly, so I came prepared. Vanessa squinted, confused. What is that? I leaned back in my chair and folded my arms. Why don't you find out? She snatched it up like a child grabbing a Christmas present she thought she deserved. Her lips curled into a condescending smirk, but when she flipped the first page, the smirk faltered. Her brows drew together. The second page, her fingers trembled. By the third, she gasped. Then came the scream, blood-curdling, raw, wild. The kind that comes not from fear, but from humiliation. Her chair toppled behind her as she stood up, so fast it crashed to the floor. You monster, she shrieked. You twisted, messed up freak. All eyes turned to me. Ethan, her husband, yanked the folder from her shaking hands, and started flipping through the pages. His mouth fell open. "Is this real?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. Every word, every receipt, every screenshot. The table went still. You could hear the tick of the clock in the hallway. My mother's mouth opened, then closed again like a fish gasping for air. No one moved. "You were so sure I wouldn't fight back," I said quietly, rising from my chair. So sure I'd stay quiet. The doormat, the dependable one, the cash cow. But guess what? I leaned in close, eyes locked with Vanessa's. "Your little show, it's over. You want to know what was in the folder?" "I'll get to that. But first, let me tell you how we got here. Because Vanessa didn't wake up one day and decide to cut me out. No. That decision was built, brick by brick, over years. Through every joke, every betrayal, every dollar I never asked back. And tonight, in front of that turkey and those liars, I finally handed back every single brick they ever threw at me. I was never the favorite. Not even close. Vanessa was the golden girl, big smile, loud laugh. Grades that looked good on the fridge. She was the one who could tell a lie straight to someone's face and make them thank her for it. I, on the other hand, was quiet, private. I didn't crave attention, and somehow they hated me for that. They took my silence for weakness. Every time I bit my tongue to keep the peace, they took it as permission to keep going. And I let them. At 19, I packed a single suitcase and left for college on a bus headed north. No help. No good luck text. Just the sound of the back door closing behind me and the cold of Columbus air in my chest. I worked 2 jobs, paid every bill, got my degree without owing anyone a cent. While Vanessa flunked out of 2 majors, found herself during a 6-month trip to Europe on my parents' dime, and came home engaged to Ethan Carter, walking resume, 0 direction. I paid for half their wedding. My parents couldn't afford it, but still somehow managed a cruise to the Bahamas 2 weeks later. I didn't say a word. I never did. When Dad needed dental surgery, $6,000, I wired the money. When Mom said the heat bill was overdue, I sent it, no questions asked. When Megan got waitlisted for a scholarship, I pitched in for her first semester. They called me generous, but there was always that tone. "Of course you'd help, Camille. You have no family of your own." That line used to sink into my chest like a blade. They didn't say it to be cruel. That was the problem. They said it like it was obvious, like I was just some lonely woman with no better purpose than to bankroll theirs. And maybe I believed them for a while. I told myself I was doing it for family. That helping meant I was part of something, that I mattered. But helping turned into obligation, then into expectation, and finally into demand. It started small. Little jabs over dinner. "Must be nice to afford good wine." "Of course you're early. You don't have kids to get ready." Then it got uglier. "You're so cold. Maybe that's why no one wants you. You don't understand real stress. You don't have a real life." They said it all while cashing my checks. But the worst part? They needed me. Desperately. Behind every jab, every passive-aggressive comment was another ask. Another bill. Another emergency. When Ethan lost his job, Vanessa called. Just a small loan. When her car died, what's $2,000 to someone like you? When their daughter needed therapy and insurance wouldn't cover it, guess who paid? Me. Always me. Until I didn't. 3 months ago, Vanessa sent a text. "Hey, can you co-sign a loan? Ethan and I want to open a plant-based wellness studio." I replied, no, that was it. Just no, no explanation. No excuses. Vanessa left me on read. After that, the cold shoulder came fast. Mom stopped calling. Dad's replies shrank to one word. Megan didn't invite me to her birthday dinner. Then one day, Vanessa blocked me on every platform, right after posting a story about cutting out toxic people for self-growth. The irony was almost funny, but I didn't sulk. I didn't beg. I just started pulling receipts. Because here's the thing. I'm not stupid. I keep records. Emails. transfers, screenshots, dates. Every time they reached out with a hand and I reached back with a checkbook, I logged it. I did the math. In the past 5 years alone, I'd sent over $78,000 to various family members. $78,000. $8,000 for Ethan's outpatient rehab. $2,300 for Vanessa's dental emergency, which turned out to be elective veneers. $1,500 for Dad's back surgery. $12,000 to help Mom get out of credit card debt, which I later found out she used to renovate the kitchen. $6,000 for Megan's college move-in. For $1,500 for a family emergency that turned out to be a girl's trip to Cabo. And not once, not one single time, did anyone offer to pay me back. They just took. And when I finally said no, I became the villain. That's when I started building the folder. That thick, black folder now sitting at the center of our Thanksgiving table, like a loaded gun. Inside were every transfer confirmation, every email, every manipulative guilt trip text, a timeline of every major payment I'd made in 5 years. And just for good measure, screenshots of Vanessa's private comment threads where she called me a cash cow with no spine. That's what she saw tonight. That's what made her scream. Because she wasn't just exposed. She was dismantled, line by line, page by page. And for the first time in years, I wasn't defending myself. I was simply telling the truth. Vanessa's scream was still ringing in the air when Ethan opened the folder again, hands trembling slightly. He flipped page after page, bank statements, text threads, even an annotated timeline of events that laid it all out like a legal brief. The room went silent. Megan put down her fork. My mother had stopped mid-sip, her wine glass hovering halfway to her lips. Dad just stared at his plate, like maybe if he didn't look up, he wouldn't have to deal with any of it. "What is this?" Ethan asked, his voice hoarse. He pointed to a highlighted line. "A hotel in Santa Monica? 3 nights." He turned the page toward Vanessa. "Paid with my credit card, and you were with someone named Alyssa?" Her jaw clenched, her shoulders locked, but she didn't say a word. My heart should have been racing. It wasn't. I was calm, maybe calmer than I had ever been in my entire life. I looked at my sister, not with hate, not with rage, just with finality. "You thought I wouldn't keep track. You thought I'd always clean up after you, no matter how many times you spit in my face. You all did." My mother blinked. "Camille, you kept records of everything?" I turned to her, measured. "You never remembered. So someone had to." Vanessa's fists were clenched at her sides. She looked ready to lunge. Her eyes darted from Ethan to me, to the folder, like she was trapped and looking for an exit. "This is a violation," she spat. "You had no right, no right?" I cut her off, my voice rising for the first time. "You just stood there and publicly announced I was no longer family. You all applauded. And now you're upset that I didn't go quietly." Ethan turned another page, his face pale. "What's this about your veneers? I thought that was an emergency." Vanessa snapped. "Don't start." "I'm just asking a question," he said. "Did you lie about needing dental surgery?" Her silence was louder than any answer. Then my mother finally spoke, voice shaky. "Can we all just calm down and be reasonable?" I turned to her slowly. "Sure, let's be reasonable. Let's talk about the time you called me a parasite while cashing the check I sent to cover your credit card debt." She winced. "That's not fair. We were under a lot of stress." "No," I said coldly. "You were under stress, and I bailed you out every single time. And the one time I said no, suddenly I was toxic." My father cleared his throat like he was about to say something wise, then mumbled, "You're making this bigger than it is." I locked eyes with him. "No, I'm finally showing how big it's always been. You stood by and watched this family bleed me dry. You heard the comments. You saw the way they treated me. And you let it happen. Because it was easier than standing up to them. He didn't deny it. Vanessa slammed her hand on the table. You're just bitter. No one needs you anymore, and that's why you're doing this. Wrong, I said softly. I'm not bitter. I'm done. She laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. You look ridiculous. Bringing folders, printing screenshots like this is some courtroom drama. You think this makes you the victim? No, it makes you pathetic. And it makes you exactly who I always knew you were, I said, stepping forward. You only cared about me when I was paying your bills. You want to talk about pathetic? Try looking at your reflection when Ethan asks you who Alyssa is. You don't get to play the martyr, she screamed. You chose to help. You didn't have to. And yet, I replied, you expected it. Every single time. Until it wasn't help anymore. It was duty. It was survival for all of you. And when I finally stopped, you voted me out. My voice cracked, not with sadness, but with rage, hot, deep, and long overdue. You didn't want a sister. You wanted a wallet with legs. Ethan stood now, the folder still in his hands. Is all of this true? He asked quietly. Everything. Vanessa didn't answer. For the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. No fake tears. No drama. Just silence. He turned to me. She told me you were paranoid. That you were jealous. That you were trying to turn everyone against her. I shook my head. She didn't need help with that. She did it all by herself. The room was quiet again. This time, not from shock, but from realization. Then my mother leaned forward, voice soft and pleading. Honey, we may have overreacted, but this is still family. Families fight. Let's just put this behind us. I didn't let her finish. You're not hearing me, I said calmly, slowly. I'm not asking for peace. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm telling you. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a white envelope, crisp and sealed. I'm done. Oh. The envelope slid across the table and stopped just in front of Ethan's hand. He caught it before it could fall to the floor, glancing at me with a wary look, as if afraid of what might be inside. He opened it slowly, the paper crinkling under his fingers, and began to read. After just the first line, his eyebrows shot up. What is this? He whispered. I answered for him, steady and sure. Power of attorney for my mother revoked. Medical proxy revoked. Emergency contact removed. I've already signed the papers. I'm legally and emotionally no longer responsible for any of you. The silence that followed was louder than Vanessa's scream had ever been. My mother gasped, her voice a breathless tremor. You're cutting ties? Completely. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years I didn't see a mother. I saw a woman who had used my loyalty like currency. I nodded. Completely. Starting now. You're being selfish, she cried. Her voice cracked, and tears began to roll down her cheeks. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. No, I said, and this time my voice dropped into something flat and final. You're not. I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair, folded it over my arm, and looked around the room one last time. Megan was frozen in place, eyes wide. Dad was staring at the empty space in front of him, like his brain hadn't caught up yet. Vanessa hadn't moved at all, just stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight, trying to hold on to whatever scraps of control she still thought she had. And Ethan just looked tired. I stepped toward the door, the heels of my boots thudding gently on the wood floor. No one stopped me. No one said a word. The turkey was untouched. The cranberry sauce had started to bleed into the stuffing. The air was thick with smoke from a forgotten candle, and the warmth that had filled the house earlier had all but vanished. I opened the door, stepped outside, and felt the cold November air rush across my face like baptism. I didn't look back. Not because it didn't hurt, it did. God, it did. But because I knew if I did, they'd try again. They'd cry, they'd beg. They'd twist and contort and rewrite everything that had happened until they were the victims, and I was the heartless monster who walked away from family. I walked down the front steps slowly, like I was stepping out of someone else's nightmare. My breath fogged in the dark. The street was quiet, just a few porch lights glowing in the distance, and somewhere a dog barking faintly. I didn't drive home right away. Instead, I took the long way out of the neighborhood, past the elementary school, the gas station, the coffee shop where I used to take Vanessa's daughter for cocoa. I kept going until I reached the lake. Hoover Reservoir was still, black water stretching out into the cold night, unmoving, undisturbed. I used to come here as a child with Dad, back when he still took the time to ask how I was doing. Back before everything was about Vanessa. I pulled over, killed the engine, and just sat there, listening to the quiet, feeling the weight in my chest finally start to loosen. There was no one to impress, no one to prove anything to, no one waiting on a transfer, a favor, a ride, a fix. Just the dark, the water, and my own heartbeat. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The next morning, nothing. No calls. No guilt-tripping voicemails. No passive-aggressive texts. The silence was strange, unfamiliar, almost eerie. But it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. The day after that, still nothing. But on the third day, it began. On the third day, the messages began. First, a missed call from my mother. Then another. Then a voicemail. Camille, we were angry, but you're still our daughter. You didn't mean what you said. Just call me back, okay? Please. I didn't answer. The next morning, a text from Vanessa. Short, sharp, frantic. You don't even realize what you've done. Ethan's filing for divorce. Are you happy? Something is seriously wrong with you. I stared at the screen, letting the words roll off me like water on glass. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She was unraveling and furious that I wasn't unraveling with her. Then came Dad. His message was longer. You went too far. We all said things we regret, but what you did, what you exposed, was nuclear. Your mother is a wreck. Come fix this. Fix it. As if this was just another one of their messes I was expected to sweep up with my silence and a checkbook. As if I hadn't spent years fixing everything they broke while they called me cold for not smiling through it. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because something inside me had shifted. There was no longer that compulsion to explain, to soften, to offer context. No guilt kept me up at night. I slept. God, I slept better than I had in over a decade. No second-guessing every message. No bracing for the next favor disguised as family bonding. No Venmo requests at midnight labeled emergency that turned out to be concert tickets or spa weekends. I woke up early, brewed coffee slowly, took walks just to feel the morning air. I made dentist appointments, doctor visits. I even found a therapist, not because I was broken, but because I was finally allowed to take care of myself without anyone telling me I was selfish for doing so. I changed my emergency contacts, updated my passwords, froze every joint account they had access to, blocked Vanessa on every platform. And for the first time, I understood something that no one had ever said to me out loud. It's not cruel to protect yourself from the people who hurt you the most. A week after Thanksgiving, a new message arrived. This time from Megan. I didn't know you paid my tuition. I'm sorry. I followed the crowd. You were always the one who actually helped. I just didn't want to be the next target. I didn't reply, but I read it twice. Then came Ethan. I filed the divorce papers. Everything in the folder checked out. She cheated, lied, manipulated. Not just you, me too. You did the right thing. I should have left sooner. I wasn't expecting that, but it landed, and it told me something I hadn't dared to believe until then. Someone saw me, clearly. Someone else finally said out loud that I wasn't the problem. And then, for the first time in years, I applied for a job in another city. Not to run, but because I finally could. There was no more, you should stay close to home. No more, but who will take care of them if you leave? I started reaching out to old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. People I had slowly withdrawn from because I was always too busy with someone else's fire to put out. Some of them had seen my post on Reddit. A few messaged just to say, "We're proud of you." That was brave. That was long overdue. No guilt, no expectations, no spin, just support. And for the first time in my life, it felt like enough. But with people like them, my family, I mean, nothing ever ends quietly. Not when they realize the door has actually closed. Because when silence didn't work, they turned to guilt. It was December 22nd when the manipulation got clever. A text from my mother. No words, just a photo. Their living room. Stockings hung, twinkling lights around the mantel, a half-decorated tree leaning to one side, and in the center of it all a gaping empty space. No gifts, no laughter, no me. The caption, "It doesn't feel the same without you. Lila keeps asking why her aunt isn't coming this year." No apology, no reflection, just a subtle twist of the knife, expertly aimed. Look what you've done. Look who you're hurting. I stared at the image for a long time, longer than I should have, and for a flicker of a second it worked. I felt the pull, the familiar ache behind my ribs, that reflex that said, "Go back, be the glue again." But then I remembered. They didn't miss me. They missed access. Minutes later, Vanessa tried calling. I let it ring. Then a message pinged in. "I know I messed up, but you don't have to punish everyone. Just come by for Lila. She misses you." 2 minutes after that. Also, Mom and Dad are behind on their mortgage. I know you don't care anymore, but the bank called. I thought you'd want to know. And there it was. The ask. Always wrapped in softness. Always hidden in guilt. But always, always an ask. I blocked the number. December 24th. Another message. This time from Dad. "You made your point. We get it. But enough is enough. We need help. We're still your blood." That night, I sat by the fireplace in my apartment. Just me and a glass of wine. No tree. No music. No forced laughter echoing down a crowded hallway. Just silence, the very thing they always said would destroy me. And for the first time in my life, I was thankful for that silence. But it didn't end there. In January, I got a call from an unknown number. I picked up out of habit. "Is this Camille Harper?" "Yes. Who's calling?" "My name is Mark. I'm calling on behalf of your father. He mentioned you're the primary executor of the family trust." I froze. "I revoked that role 2 months ago," I said. "It was finalized by the family attorney. My name is off everything." He hesitated. "I see. Well, your father said he couldn't reach you directly and asked me to explore other options. They're in a bit of a bind." Of course they were. The ATM was closed. The safety net had snapped. Now they were getting creative. I hung up without another word. But the final straw came in February. A small envelope, handwritten. No return address. But I recognized the looping cursive instantly. My mother. Inside, 3 pages of carefully crafted regret. Page 1, we said things in anger. "You've always been the strong one. We never realized how much we leaned on you." Page 2, "Your father's health is declining. Vanessa is completely alone now. We're worried about Lila. She's struggling." Page 3, "The real reason we're selling the house. But we're underwater on the mortgage. We just need a little help to get through this. Then we'll never ask again. Please, Camille, do it for your father. Do it for the family." I held the letter in my lap for a long time, letting it sit, letting myself feel the ache they wanted me to feel. But what I felt was clarity. They weren't asking for reconciliation. They were asking for permission to hurt me again. They didn't want me back. They wanted the version of me who didn't say no, who paid quietly, who suffered silently, who never pushed back. But that Camille, she's gone. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and dropped the letter into the trash. No drama, no tears, just a soft, Quiet thump as it landed between a grocery receipt and a banana peel. I wasn't their duct tape anymore. I wasn't their golden goose. I wasn't their guilt-stricken daughter praying for crumbs of affection. I was done. And the part that scared them most? I was doing just fine without them. Spring came early that year. It crept into Columbus like it had been waiting just for me. Soft morning light through my window, cardinals chirping outside the porch, fresh tulips pushing up through the soil like tiny declarations of hope. And for once, I had time to notice. I moved into a bigger apartment, not because I needed more space, but because I wanted to breathe. I rearranged furniture, just for fun. I hung art that made me feel calm. I planted lavender in a pot by the window and watched it grow. I got the job I'd applied for, a quiet consulting role in another city, working remotely flexible hours. No more late nights. No more panic. Just structure. Peace. And I started volunteering on Saturdays. A shelter for women and children. I helped with tax paperwork, job applications, little things. Things I was good at. Things no one expected of me. No guilt. No backhanded gratitude. Just impact. I started reconnecting with friends. Real ones. Not the kind who liked my holiday photos but never checked in when I went quiet. No. The ones who remembered I loved Earl Grey tea with honey. The ones who sent me a playlist titled, "You're Free Now." And the most unexpected part? Some of them had read my story online. You were brave. You did what most of us dream about. They didn't deserve you. For a while, I didn't believe them. But their voices didn't come with strings. They weren't baiting me with praise just to ask for something next. They simply saw me. And little by little, I started seeing myself. I went for walks without checking my phone every 10 minutes. I stopped flinching when I heard the notification buzz. I changed my number, twice, just to be sure. I cooked meals for myself, not for gatherings. I took pictures of sunsets that no one else would ever see. And most importantly, I learned to sit with stillness. Not fill it, not fight it, just exist in it. Sometimes I'd think about Lila. I wondered what she was being told. What story they'd spun to justify my absence. That I was unstable? Ungrateful? Cruel? Maybe one day she'd ask the right questions. Maybe she wouldn't. But I took comfort in one thing. I had become the example no one else in that family dared to be. I was the one who finally said enough. A few days ago, another letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Just 3 words on the page. We're still family. No apology. No reflection. Just the same old hook. But this time, nothing inside me moved. No tightness in my chest. No heat behind my eyes. No ache in my gut. Just silence. I folded the paper in half, tossed it in the bin, opened a bottle of wine, and made dinner. Not for them. Not to impress anyone. Just for me. Because this is what peace looks like. Not loud. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just quiet. Free. Alive.